I want to bring on the doc because he is joining and he is ready. I mean, the doc, this guy moves like a superhero. I mean, 1 minute New York, he's back. He's in a hotel. He's at MetLife. Now he's on stream with us 2 times this week. Doc's given us 2 appearances, 9 to 9:30 here. So let's bring on the doc, the man, the myth, the legend. Please welcome to the show, the publisher of Detroit Lions on Sports Illustrated and the host of the Detroit Sports Podcast. Please welcome to the show, Mr. John Maakaron. John.
Yeah, fellas.
Welcome back, John. How was the drive?
Back in one piece? Man, what a trip. Caught a little bit of the remnants of the hurricane from south in Florida, but the drive back from 3 o'clock was amazing. Back in the D, baby. I'm looking forward to talking about the game. It was tough, man. It was crazy to be part of all that, but man, football's back and we got some things to talk about, right?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, yeah.
We actually have been talking. We've been talking all the past hour about some of our takeaways and guys that have impressed. And I'll start with the guy that we've had discussions about. And I just got to get this out the way, Doc. Hendon Hooker. All right, Hendon Hooker. We had this conversation before, and again, OTAs, minicamp, training camp has not looked great. But then it comes into a game situation, Doc, and I brought this up during the show. I thought he just looked poised. I thought he handled the offense pretty well. He didn't look like the moment was too big for him. I get he's going up against 2s and 3s, but you have to also factor in he's working with 2s and 3s on offense. What did you make of Hendon Hooker's debut? Got a slide, Doc, I'll say that. But just overall, his first NFL organized game, whether it's preseason or not.
Yeah, it's just really the number one takeaway is it's unfortunate he couldn't play more reps. You clearly saw that he was going to get the second half, and we got to get out of the way. Nate Sudfeld was brutal, and that was disappointing. I thought he would do a lot more than he did. It made the game unwatchable in the first half. The offense did basically nothing, and it was just really a game in which you said, man, this is going to be a grind. It had just the aura of a damp, dark atmosphere. There was really nobody there at MetLife Stadium. I think there was more media members in the press box than there were in the crowd. I was excited, amped, and then you realize, oh, wait a minute, when you started to see Sudfeld struggle, and then you're like, please, I think everybody watching at home was like, and I'm going to share because I don't know if everybody else has this uncle or family friend that does this, but it was great for me in the press box. But you recognize, okay, that first half was a grind. And at halftime, I get a text message from a family friend. He's a little bit older, like in his 60s, who's been through the ups and downs. And he's like, WTF, Sudfeld's the worst quarterback I've ever seen! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. He's like, has the guy ever thrown a pass before? And I was just like, I know, it's tough, it's brutal. And he was just like, this is the worst half of football I've ever seen. And it took a little bit of the luster out, and everybody at home was screaming, put Hendon Hooker in. My God, we don't want to see Sudfeld anymore. It was crazy. But look, for Hendon Hooker, look, the opportunity that he had to have those 2 drives, the first drive wasn't that great, but the second one, you saw glimpses of what he can do. And everybody said it online, and I had to contain myself, but I was like everybody else on the inside. He brought out the truck stick on the Giants, and that was sweet to see. But here's the problem. You got a running quarterback. He's still got to learn that the NFL is more than just one step drop and then take off. You got to be willing to stand in the pocket a little bit, be willing to anticipate. And that's the toughest thing for a young quarterback is they just have the hardest time throwing, anticipating where the receiver is going to be. He's kind of waiting a little bit too long in certain reps where he's waiting for the receiver to get open. And the Giants did a good job of locking up Fountain and DPJ and others. Isaiah Williams had the best game. But for Hendon Hooker, you got to realize the best ability is availability. And he got his bell rung. And that stinks because we all love to see it. We're like, wait a minute. Detroit has a quarterback with legs. I think everybody just loved to see it because we've had Goff and Stafford and everybody else that was immobile. To see somebody that can extend a play is great. But there's that fine balance between taking off and staying in the pocket and extending plays. And unfortunately, Dan Campbell said it. Like, hey, you can't get your bell wrong. You can't leave the game like that. It's just unfortunate. It happens, but running quarterbacks got to realize that you're better suited to extend plays, but find the avenue to release the football, or if the play's not there, slide and get to the next play. And, that's the fine balance. But for Hendon Hooker, hopefully he's okay after testing, getting, a concussion. but you hope that the opportunity, if it's not against the Chiefs, maybe against the Steelers, that he needs as many reps as humanly possible. And again, I think with Hendon Hooker, we'll talk about it. It begs the question, okay, what would happen if he was put in, if something happened to Jared Goff? That'd be tough to say because he's inconsistent. And the thing that we don't know is how would he handle playing with better talent? We know what he does against, 2s and 3s. What would he do? If he struggles a little bit against 2s and 3s in practice, you would kind of think that if he goes up against a number one defensive back and safeties and a defensive line that's trying to pressure him, he would struggle a little bit. So he's still very raw, but you see glimpses, and that's what the preseason's about. And that's the avenue in which you can't say Hendon's the backup, Hendon's number 2. You can't say that because in practice, he's showing the same thing, inconsistent. And you recognize that we do got to have the talk. Above that, would you roll and gamble into the season with Nate Sudfeld? I think the discussion needs to be had. It's probably not.
No, Doc, absolutely not. No.
Doc, I want to ask you, I want to throw this out here as well. One of the big things I think I took away from the game was his defensive line, the depth. There were some guys who stood out, and there were some guys who probably took a little step back that you probably could question a little bit. But guys like Isaac Ukwu and Broderick Martin, just 2 big nights, it felt like. What are your thoughts on just the defensive line as a whole that you saw last night? Some of these guys like Ukwu and obviously Broderick it felt like he made a couple big-time plays. Got a sack. I don't know. They didn't credit him for it, but he definitely got in there and got the sack. What are your thoughts on those guys and as well as just on the defensive line guys that might have taken a step back?
Yeah, no doubt. Hendon Hooker, raw. Broderick Martin, raw. Seems like Brad Holmes likes him raw.
Hey, Doc, easy, Doc, easy. You gotta stop you there.
Wait, he likes the raw dogs out there that play football.
God, Doc.
But talking about Broderick Martin, man, it was good to see, right? It was great to see Broderick make plays, move around a little bit, and be impactful. So it's good to see. And he after the game, he said, "Look, man, Terrell Williams is working with him daily." And he's starting to be impactful. That's all you can ask for is make those plays. And Ukwu was great because, I really haven't written his name down too much in practice. And it's always great to see those that kind of emerge during the games because that's important is to make those plays. And for the defensive line, anybody that can make impact, it only bodes well to add to the depth because the starters are great. Clearly, nobody's questioning the starters 11 on both sides. But to have Broderick Martin take that second-year jump and play at a higher level. Now you hope he builds on it moving forward. And Ukwu, that's great as well. You recognize, man, when you can make plays in a really nasty environment, in an environment where the play was sloppy. I mean, isn't it great? Sudfeld throws an interception, and then the other guys can't secure the football and gives the football right back. So that kind of set the tone for how the game was. It was just real sloppy. But guys made plays, and you guys are pointing them out. And for Broderick Martin, that's just great because if they can count on him, if something happens to DJ Reader or he needs a spell for a series or so, or for a couple reps, if you can put Broderick Martin in to be a run stuffer, he's doing his thing. And he was gracious after the game and talked to the media a little bit. And I think he's learning and taking advantage of the time that he's had in training camp for sure. I expect more big things as well.
And Doc, I think a guy who stole the show last night, my favorite draft pick, Sione Vaki. He looked we talk about Hendon Hooker looking very poised. Sione Vaki looked very poised. So you could tell that he just had a good feel on the game. His first run, he hit the spin move. On his second run, I believe it was a draw. It looked David Montgomery-esque. He was able to make a move inside the tackles and then made a nice second move to get 2 or 3 more yards added onto that. What was the feel with Sione Vaki on the offensive side? Like, what did they take away? Did they feel very confident in him? And what did you see on the field from him, just from your perspective?
Yeah, look, Sione Vaki, man, that was a guy that when the game ended, Dan Campbell was asked, like, hey, who stuck out? And he mentioned Isaiah Williams. He mentioned Rakestraw, Broderick. And then a media member said, hey, what about Sione? He's like, yeah, he popped as well. And you see when he plants his foot in the ground, he can make moves. He can do some things. And I just thought that, hey, for his rookie debut, I thought that was great. That's what he needs to do is continue to show burst and to be able to earn opportunities out there. But clearly his role is going to be special teams. But hey, when you make plays in the preseason and you're consistent in practice week in, week out, there will be opportunities for him to play. And I do see that. You see the natural development, you see the burst, you see opportunities. that he does have a smart football player. And look, he's learning from David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs and Craig Reynolds. That's a great room to learn from. So that's going to expedite his development. The best part of that is in the preseason when you can start to foreshadow. Could you imagine Vaki and Gibbs on the field at the same time, or Montgomery and Vaki at the same time, the mixing and matching, if they did two running backs at the same time? Man, with that offensive line healthy, man, that would be something. But with Vaki, the opportunities for him to develop and grow this training camp has been fun to watch. And I just can't wait to see it next week as we get back into it back at Allen Park.
I'll ask you this. You already mentioned Isaiah Williams, and he's a player we talked about when he was first signed. They gave him $250,000 guaranteed, undrafted free agent out of Illinois. I liked what he brought to the table initially. Obviously, in the preseason game, you saw more of what he can offer. What do you make of him, and what do you make of kind of the competition there and the chances that Isaiah Williams could potentially kind of build on this, that game last night and maybe even make the roster? What have you seen from Isaiah? I mean, kind of dating back, and mention that as well, because I haven't read too much about him.
Oh, dagger to the heart. Dagger to the heart. Right? I did a feature on him, Jeff. It was great. And so
I was going to say, I did read that. Go ahead.
Yeah. And the headline which was crafted by myself, was Isaiah Williams has the DNA to compete for a roster spot.
Damn. And Doc always knows. The Doc always knows.
The Doc knows. The Doc finds the people that are going to contribute and writes about them. And the way in which to describe him is, look, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He was an undrafted free agent, and he made plays at Illinois. And when the Lions made a commitment to him, now it's not substantial, but it's a couple $100,000 guaranteed. And it's eye-opening because typically undrafted free agents don't receive that much guaranteed money. But he's been taking a lot of reps, and he's doing all the work, because the reason why I talked to him was clearly a lot of the leaders like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Aleem McNeil are starting to impact the younger guys. And after practice, I was talking to Saint, off the record, and I just said, "Hey, who's that out there?" And he pointed out, and I was like, because a lot of times the guys after practice will just put their stuff down, and you don't know what their numbers and stuff. So he's like, "Oh, that's Isaiah Williams." I'm like, "Okay, let me go talk to him." And he shared a story. He's like, "Hey, he's got the DNA from the time he was young, that, hey, you got to go out there and grind and earn your keep and do what you got to do." So he's out there on the jugs machine after practice, doing the work, doing the extra that you need. And he's been taking counsel from St. Brown, from Khalif Raymond, and he's been doing everything possible. So clearly it's going to translate when the opportunity comes. Now, it's like, what was it, 3-4 catches for 35, 36 yards, but he stood out because not a lot of the other receivers did anything, which was disappointing. Green getting the concussion, DPJ, you guys saw again, he's there, but he's not making plays. It's unfortunate, because you would think that he would take hold or have a little bit more chemistry with Sudfeld and Hooker, but it's not happening. So yeah, you can't really make too much evaluations on the wide receivers. You hope that, because at the same time too, when people say, well, Fountain didn't do much, or these guys, look, here's the situation. Those that read Lions on SI recognize that during the 2 joint practices, the backups on the offensive line kind of didn't do as well as many people thought. The Giants kind of took it to them a little bit in terms of there was some sloppiness, some disorganization, and so that carried into the game. So when Sudfeld struggled, it's not all on him. The offensive line didn't play as well. And for Fountain, look, the opportunities were there to get open, but sometimes when the offensive line is not doing what they need to do, that forces pressure, and the routes and the plays don't develop as well. So I would love to see Fountain with the ones. And that's what you saw in training camp and a little bit with the joint practices, that he's out there and he's got the big body. So it's just tougher to evaluate. You have to kind of look a little deeper. But with Isaiah Williams, I think he can compete. I think that this is a guy whose DNA is there. He may not make the roster, but I do think that there's a spot for him on the practice squad where he can develop. And if something happens to Khalif Raymond or St. Brown, you plug him right in and he'll make plays. He'll learn and develop and be a great scout team player as well. So I think Isaiah Williams, when you learn about his story from myself and other people, you'll learn that this guy is a playmaker who understands that, hey, this is the culture. And also, too, in the story, it's been told that he had opportunities to go elsewhere, but he picked Detroit. Obviously, the money was good, but he said he liked the culture. He wants to be coached hard. He likes the culture here. He likes the opportunity with the room to learn and grow. So he picked Detroit when he had a couple other options. So that's always good to hear.
Hey, Doc, I want to ask you this real quick. When it comes to the kind of the 53-man roster, I know it's just the first preseason game, and I know the cuts are a little different than years past, where I think it's like August 27th or something like that. They that's when like the full 53-man guys have to be cut. There's no more that kind of dwindling down. Coming out of last night's game, is there anyone that kind of was on the line or even you thought was an automatic roster spot? And then last night you saw some other guys or you saw them play and you're like, yeah, they might be on the cut line now. Like there's got like, now it's time to keep an eye on this guy. Like, is there anyone that stood out to you that kind of took a step back and you're like, all right, this is someone who's in jeopardy now?
Yeah, let's just first start with who kind of, struggled a little bit. You can check out, we did studs and duds. We do that after every game, who played well, who didn't. I was a little bit concerned with James Houston. I thought he'd do a little bit more. He had that penalty. He had that nice, pass rush, but at the same token, a little bit inconsistent in regards to kind of what we've seen in practice. So you need to see him do a little bit more to keep him out there on the field. Look, man, Manu struggled a lot. And it's a little bit concerning that he was getting pushed back quite a bit against, third stringers. And you see the size and everything like that, but he's, up and down. Now, when I look at it and I say, okay, who struggled mightily, again, DPJ sticks out. I don't know if they're going to cut him, but I just don't think that he's making the plays that you would think that, hey, you're fighting for your job, that you got to step it up. A player also that kind of struggled a little bit, gave up a sack that caused concern. Again, I don't think a candidate to be cut, but Colby Sorsdahl gave up a sack. I thought that he's inconsistent at times where he's still developing. You got to remember too, he came from William and Mary and he's been thrown into the fire, learning a couple different positions. So he got beat pretty clearly by the Giants right there on film. If you watch that play, it was brutal, bad technique, and he gave up a sack. So I look at, in terms of who we were looking at, I was very impressed with obviously a lot of the rookies. Trying to think of, it was just a bad performance all the way around. And you recognize, my goodness, there's just inconsistency offensively. So, the offensive line, that was the biggest thing that I highlighted was, man, the reserves on the offensive line weren't that good. But I mean, you just have to put it out there. If you're a veteran quarterback, you're a leader, you can't put performances like that on tape. I thought that Nate Sudfeld should have been cut. I wouldn't have been surprised if I was driving home and got the alert from Booner, who's online 24/7. I don't know what he's doing, but he's online a lot. But if I got the alert that that Nate Sudfeld got cut, because the discussions was had, I listened to it all day and people were in my ear. What do you think about Tannehill? What do you think about Taylor Heineke? What do you think about calling up, other people like Teddy Bridgewater from retirement? I'm like, well, you got to start to have that kind of discussion in regards to, Nate Sudfeld. Anybody, maybe you would think, based on his time in the system and knowing things, you would kind of think that he would do a little bit better, that maybe anybody would be an upgrade at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised. I just thought his performance stuck out the most because he had that terrible throw that was intercepted. He just looked disjointed, not in rhythm. It never got going. And of course, the elements play a part in it. But you think a veteran who's been in the system would at least have a little bit more command, don't you think? And I just think it stunk up the game. It made the offense quite disappointing. And I just thought that his performance stunk it up. I think everyone's highlighting, man, Sudfeld really was a performance that was not worthy of the position that he's in.
Hey, real quick, Doc, I just want to follow up with that comment there, or the James Houston comment. Is there a situation here like where the James Houston, with the way Ukwu played, and Dan said yesterday or last night that he was like, I love the way he looked. Is there a situation where like James Houston has to perform the next 2 weeks to make the roster, or is like, because I did see a couple things on Twitter of people saying like James Houston might now be on that question line where he could be a cut guy, and with what we saw last night. Is that an actual like an observation to keep an eye on?
Well, I wouldn't say it's an observation. It's the way you look at it is he has a skill set that many, I think, teams would covet. So if there was going to be a surprise trade maybe it would be James Houston involved because of the fact that he has a skill and just maybe a situation in which he needs to go to a different philosophy and things like that. But I think he's got talent. You see it. It's just not consistent enough. It's not, it's kind of like one of those things when you look at a player and, you want to rein them in. You want a player to kind of buy into the system. Like, don't be all, but I think James Houston kind of has a little bit of that Deion swagger. He wants to dance a little bit. He wants to showcase more of his personality. He wants to kind of flourish and kind of have more fun with the game. And I just think that the Lions are like really trying to mold him into the player, but it's just tough. And at times it can get to the point where maybe he's thinking, well, maybe it's not for me or whatever, but you're not seeing the jump consistently that you would always like to see from James Houston. He's got the raw talent. That's the thing that I think keeps him on the roster is that, okay, you just don't give up guys that can rush the passer. But the question mark is that how long are they going to experiment with trying to make him a 3-down outside linebacker and just say, okay, you're here on 3rd down. When we need you, rush the passer and do your job and get us 10 sacks. But at the same token, I just think that, maybe there's frustrations on both sides. I'm speculating, but you just wonder why would a guy with that much talent, he's still coming back from that injury. Why would he not thrive in what's going on when others have? So I think there's a lot to it. There's a lot of dynamics to it. He's got a lot on his plate, but you just see it. You just saw it in the game yesterday. Can make a nice play, but then has a penalty that you just can't take at that level.
Doc, another guy I want to bring up, kind of a two-parter here, but one, what are your opinions on what you saw from Mekhi Wingo yesterday? And secondly, the depth of the linebacking core, because honestly, it was pretty alarming. Eric Gray looked like the second coming of Tiki Barber out there last night. He pretty much got anything he wanted, but a guy that did stick out specifically in the run game was Deron Gilbert. I didn't really hear much out of camp, but I thought he kind of stuck out a little bit. So Mekhi Wingo, Deron Gilbert, just your overall thoughts on that linebacking group in this with the depth of it.
Yeah, no doubt. I like Wingo. And that's why I talked to him after joint practice. And man, that's what I love about when you start in camp, you start to learn some of the stories as to how things are going. Mekhi Wingo has a mentor in Aleem McNeil. And Mekhi told me after practice on Tuesday, he's like, look, Aleem McNeil is sort of my size, so he can kind of give me tips and pointers on how to pass rush. And you started to see it translate onto the field. He stood out to Dan Campbell, and you see somebody where, okay, you can plug him in and he can be someone that doesn't look completely lost. Yeah, Deron Gilbert, I thought also stuck out as well when you're looking at the defense. Yeah, a lot of people highlighted that the 2s and 3s got torched a little bit. But look, you got to also remember when we talk individual performances, the idea is in football to play collectively. And so that's what's tough is that collectively the 2s and 3s haven't gelled just yet because they're always mixing and matching. It's not like the 1s where, okay, the 1s all play together. They're gelled. They know, Amon-Ra can just give a little look to Goff and they know, okay, we're going to break the route here. And they know already. The 2s and the 3s are always mixing and matching. And so it's always a hodgepodge. And so for them to play together, that's what kind of stung in that I think people are more and more realizing the preseason sucks and a lot of hype. You can look at individual performances, but there's always that caveat. You can't say Mekhi Wingo's the man. You can't say Broderick Martin's arrived because you always have to put the caveat that they're playing with guys that potentially are not going to be working. They'll be out there with Adam hanging out in the chat. You know what I mean? So it'll be an interesting scenario when the final 53 is put together, but some guys you're starting to highlight and you guys are on it.
Well, we appreciate you, Doc. You know what? Joining us on a Friday. We had him earlier in the week. He's always here every single Wednesday, but of course took the drive all the way back to his home and joined the show. So we appreciate you, Doc. Don't forget, I did link the article, which I definitely read in the chat. Isaiah Williams, feature on him. It was great. Go check it out. It's the link in the chat. Check out John's stuff, Detroit Lions on Sports Illustrated. Listen to his podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks for the time, guys. I do got to talk. Look, Adam's already in here talking about, look, Adam, we're out there, Fountain's making plays with the 1s. So it's not unnecessary hype. It's not. He's out there. Oh, we can't say, look, he moved it. When the things that are significant in camp is when somebody starts with the 3s and ends up with the 1s. You can't just poo-poo that. The problem is that, yeah, in terms of a preseason game, you also got to remember that environment was crappy. And I wish I wasn't thinking that because after the game, our walk at MetLife was so long the setup there. It's a beautiful stadium, but the complete setup was terrible. I'm going to tell you guys a story. I almost had to throw down with security. But
come on, Doc.
Yeah, it's crazy. Fountain makes plays. It's not unnecessary hype. He's making plays, and he's making them with the ones. He made them at joint practices. But that environment was shitty. It was kind of the feel of like, okay, let's just get out of here. But look, pay attention. I think he has the intangibles that you need maybe to be a 4 or 5. Just, hey, when we need to play, you're out there. You're not asking him to lead the team. The guys, the competition's pretty much for starters are set. You're just looking for guys. Hey, if we have an injury or we need someone that we can rely on the scout team, hey, Fountain can be the guy. Brad Holmes likes big body receivers that can high point the ball. He can do that. It's all about consistency. And Dan Campbell said it like, yeah, you did it one week. Now do it again. So you can't just say that. It's poo-pooed. He has talent, but yeah, he's got to be consistent. Now, the setup there at MetLife, my God, it was crazy. I pull up with a non-speaking English Uber driver, and we roll past the gate, and this old lady's like, "Hey!" and she's screaming, and it doesn't faze the Uber driver. He stops, he backs up, and she's like, "I'm wearing a Sports Illustrated shirt with I got 2 watches, a backpack." She's like, "Who are you with?" I said, "I'm a media member." And she's like, "Prove it." I said, "I'm with Sports Illustrated. I got 2 phones. I'm here to cover the game. Here's an email." And she wasn't welcoming. So immediately she's looking at me, and I think she was profiling. So she looks and she calls a superior, and she's like, "Wait a minute." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So I'm telling the Uber driver, who clearly doesn't speak English, I'm like, "See, this is what happens to me all the time. These people are stupid. Like, clearly they don't know what's going on. They don't have my name on a list. I'm not important." And she calls over security and is like, "Hey, who are you with?" I'm like, "I'm with Sports Illustrated. I'm trying to cover the game here. I have an email that says I'm covering the game." And she's like, "Next time, tell them to give you a pass." I said, "A pass for what? I don't need parking. I'm here in an Uber." She's looking at me like, "Okay, sir." And I was about to get like upset because
you're about to see the real Doc.
Yeah, Doc, let him know.
1,000th time, like, you know what I mean? All I need is for 1 or 2 people to relay that John Maakaron's coming. They never will. And I'm always anticipating it. But when it happens for the 1,000th time, it's almost to the point where I'm going to say publicly, no more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm going to be like, "Listen, I'm John motherfucking Maakaron. Let me in the building. Leave me the fuck alone. I'm the least of your worries. There's a bunch of other 1,000 fake people trying to get into the stadium. It's not me. Stop fucking with me. I'm easy. Look, John Maakaron, I pass all the security tests. No criminal record. I've done nothing. I'm wearing a Sports Illustrated shirt. Do I look like a criminal that's going to be doing something with a public bag with a non-speaking Uber driver? You know what I mean?
Let him know, Doc.
So by the 1,000th time of that bullshit, a normal human being gets pissed. But I laugh with the Uber driver, and he's just looking at me like, "Okay," and he just dropped me off. And then from that point, what sucks is you get dropped off, and you got to walk 5,000 feet to get to the media thing. And it's like, man, they didn't show no love to the media from the visiting side, but I had a good time with it. It was crazy all the way around, and I'm happy I survived it. But if I'm giving a pro tip, if you guys end up doing this and you go out there, go to the 2 joint practices, skip the preseason game. It's something where you recognize, all right, the players just want to get in, get out. It's competition. It was fun to see for me to personally go see MetLife Stadium, to take the family to New York and have a great time. But in terms of a media perspective, preseason, I think on the media side is not a A1 priority. I'm not going to Kansas City. I will cover, of course, cover the game, but not going to Kansas City. I will definitely be at Ford Field. And the other thing too is security is ramped up. A lot of high-tech stuff going on to make sure that you get in, which is great. That worked. I was anticipating that I'm standing there and everybody gets in and I'm not, but that worked perfectly. So that was good. I got back safe. So I enjoyed the chat and to break it down. But man, boys, it's something, because the concern level is always there. What do you do if something happens to Jared Goff? Do you make that move? I think you got to. I think for competition's sake, I think you can find a little bit better than Nate Sudfeld. And the offensive line needs a little bit more time to gel, especially behind the starters. And you recognize, their performance wasn't the best. But hey, that's the best part about camp, is that you have time to clean it all up. You can't make conclusive statements, but you guys and your lists are very accurate as to who to pay attention to and who to keep it and who to, the stock watch, who's moving up, who's moving down. And I hope that really, truly, I'll say this. The highlight was clearly having, people say, hey, you covered it wall to wall. Thank you. The highlight was people saying, Doc, as I was leaving and fist bumping. And
here we go, Doc.
Yeah, a couple of people recognized me. And
Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah, I'm appreciative of that, of the opportunity that I have to cover the Detroit Lions in the NFL and to be in the mix. And I think that when I saw the coverage versus everybody else, I said, okay, I'm in the mix. I'm doing what I think a lot of people like. But now, I also want to say this, because the coverage was, I believe, great. You guys think it was great. But here's the best part about life in the NFL. And I'm sorry, I'm only going to take up one more minute of your precious time. It was crazy. It was crazy. Wall-to-wall joint practice coverage, live blogs, interviews, footage, numbers through the roof, right? Just so happened to listen to Bussin' with the Boys. Clearly, I like podcasts. I listen to a lot of them, a lot of good people not doing them that are in the chat that should be doing them. But I love all podcasts. And Bussin' with the Boys, Amon-Ra, Jared, right? So my boy Amon-Ra sits there and they're talking, and the natural question comes up, hey, what do you think about USC joining the Big Ten? And Amon-Ra drops the hammer, and he's like, oh, I'm not concerned at all. USC is going to take care of business. And look, Michigan's one and done. I know they're done. I'm like, oh, ding, ding. That's a story that people will read that. Boom, boom, boom. I write that and thinking, okay, that's just going to be one story in the mix, and the coverage is going to be great. Guys, that story, literally after that story posted, I did not have to write a single thing for the rest of the week. I don't have to write anything for the rest of the week. People are still reading that. I don't know if somebody reblogged it or what the hell happened, what firestorm or what message board that went to, but that shit took off like wildfire. And I'm sitting there going, what the hell? I said to my friends, I'm like, all that football knowledge and one simple story that took me 5 minutes about Michigan, where Amon-Ra's like, I know Michigan's done, blew up, where basically I could sit back and the blessing of that is I could pace my stories. There's no pressure. There's nothing. I could write whatever I want or not write. So this weekend, maybe it will be a little lighter on Saturday, but I just love the fact that in sports journalism and media, certain things will be talked about that blow up that you have no clue on. And it just, guys, it paid for the trip and it paid for next week too. So this is great. Listen, Amon-Ra, I love you, man. Thank you. You and your shit talking ways jives with me. I love it. You put some schmeckles, you put some dollars in my pocket. Thank you, my man.
Hey, Doc, I know if you listen to the episode, I know you heard that Jared Goff said he's a Michigan fan as well. You heard that, right?
I heard that too. Just want to let you know. I love the fact that State kept Amon-Ra from going to Michigan. That perked me up too.
That's fair. And I was at that game too when he said that, the monsoon game. I was there. Terrible loss, man.
I was there too. The monsoon game when everyone was like, why the hell is Michigan throwing the football? That was crazy.
That was Kenneth Walker game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The monsoon, I think, was a year later. Shout out my dad got married on the Kenneth Walker day. Tough day for me. Well, good day for me, but tough day on the Michigan side of things. Shout out Pops.
I love it.
I was at the wedding, and it was just like touchdown Kenneth Walker. And I'm like, oh, this is a disaster. I have to go up to the wedding. This is a disaster.
Hey, well, keep being great, Doc.